if we can use our companies as a force for good and turn it towards either society or the environment's benefit, the benefit for the company is obvious in terms of engagement of the staff, etc., etc. And the benefit for the environment or society is obvious. And we have such creative geniuses inside our companies that can do these things. And we don't need government to tell us what to do.
Hi, I'm Belden Menkus. Welcome to the Purposeful Strategist, the podcast that shifts the conversation about purpose and strategy from what organizations should do to what business leaders are doing and what they've learned along the way. My guest today is Mark Cuddigan, CEO of This, the UK plant-based food company. Founded in 2020, This has grown to be the fourth largest brand in the UK's plant-based category, with almost 8% of the chilled meat-free market. Mark joined This as CEO in February 2024. He'd previously served as CEO of Ella's Kitchen, maker of organic baby and toddler food. During his time there, he increased the company's revenue from 41 million to 100 million pounds. He's also a driving force in the B Corp movement, having served on its B Lab board for almost 5 years and gaining B Corp accreditation for Ella's Kitchen in 2016. This is also a certified B Corp. Mark, welcome to the Purposeful Strategist podcast.
Hi, good morning, Belden. Thank you for having me.
It's a real pleasure to have you here. So this is the second time you've taken over a business from its founders. The first, if I've got it right, was Paul Lindley at Ella's Kitchen, and now it's Pete Sharman and Andy Shovel at This. Those sorts of transitions can often be seen to be a bit tricky, both for the founders and the new CEO. How's it been for you at This?
It's been similar to how it was at Ella's Kitchen. It's been absolutely brilliant. And this isn't going to work very well in a podcast, but it'll work for you. Here's a key that was given to me by Pete and Andy, and it's a silver key.
So, Mark, you're showing me a very impressive and actually fairly large, what looks like silver ornamental key.
Yeah.
That has the word "this" at the end of it.
So it's got the This logo on it, and it was done by Pete's wife, who's a jeweler, and they gave it to me in front of the whole team, which was, it's a really sweet and thoughtful thing for them to do, to get made.
Mm-hmm.
And it signifies them handing over their baby to me. And they did it in front of the whole team. And I think that really sums it up. And Paul Lindley took a very similar approach at Ella's Kitchen, in that he decided very quickly, when James McMaster and I took over the business, not to come into the business, because he wanted us to have the autonomy to run the business. And you're right, taking over from founders can be a very difficult thing for both parties. But if you truly trust the person that's coming in to take over from you, I would urge founders to take that step back and step out of the business and allow that person the autonomy to run the business. And both with Paul and then now with Andy and Pete, they've done that. And from my perspective, it's worked brilliantly because of that.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And if I've got it right, the founders started this when they founded it in 2020. That the mission was to force the world's livestock into retirement, which I love the slightly cheeky element of that. How would you describe the company's purpose today? Is it the same?
Yeah, it pretty much is. We've tweaked it slightly, because when I came in, I said to both Andy and Pete that I felt there was this kind of misconnection, I suppose, with some people in the business with what our purpose was. In that there were people in the business who are in the business because they know that there's a huge environmental benefit if we can get people to change what they're eating. So if they stop eating animals and start eating more plants, there's obviously a massive impact on the environment from a positive point of view. If we just keep our purpose to animals, we're not talking to, half the people who are in the business. So if we can make it both animals and the environment, then we can supercharge this connection, because that's why everybody in the business is in the business. Some people are for both, and you can kind of prioritize it depending on what's important to you. So we tweaked it very slightly to be about animals and the environment. And we've had massive change this year, but that's one of the changes we put through the business.
You've talked about sort of, good for animals, good for the planet, I can't resist asking about good for people, because there's certainly some degree of science that says eating less meat, maybe eating no meat's healthier. Is that part of the conversation around purpose or not?
It's not part of the conversation around our purpose, no. Our purpose is specifically around animals in the environment. And I think, with regards to plant-based meat alternatives, it's a difficult one to go down because whilst the vast, vast majority are better for you than the animal equivalent, they're not better for you than eating fruit and vegetables. Obviously, it's better for animals if we don't eat them. And I think the science has pretty much been proved with regards to the environment. So those are our sweet spots. But, when we turn to looking about how we're going to be successful, okay, well, it's going to be around having, delicious, nutritious food, which is better for you. But that's kind of like the how we win rather than the why we win, if that makes sense.
I think it's a great distinction. So how did that process of kind of reevaluating and somewhat changing the purpose happen? Who got involved? Because I could hear what you said is it was almost just a discussion between you and the two founders. If that's it, that's fine. Or was there something else?
Yeah, we went to the team, and it shouldn't be a me decision. We went to the team and said, do you like the current values that we have? What do you like? What do you don't like? Do you think they could be better? My gut feel, and actually it was my HR director, Catherine, felt they were a little bit blokey and they could be better in sort of forming this connection and these values that we subscribe to. And went to the team, and out of a team of 50, I think like 34 people said, we'd like to be involved. And the team decided that they wanted to change the values. And then the team decided what the values would be. And I think that's really, really important. It shouldn't be like me saying, like, this is what it's going to be and then launching it. That's kind of like a top-down thing. And I want this to have as flat a structure as possible in that anybody's opinion is as important as anybody else's. We set a strategy, a long-term strategy. First time the business has ever had a strategy going forward more than 12 months. The way we did it is we went away as my senior team, so my direct reports, in the first instance to say, okay, so in 3 years' time, what do we want to have achieved? Really simply, where do we want to get to? And then we thought about just the main areas in which we thought we could get there. And then we threw it out into each individual function to go away, and then they come up with their functional strategies of how we're going to achieve the goals that we want to achieve in 3 years. And it's really, really important, this, for a number of reasons. One is every single person in the business has had a handprint on the strategy. It's not my strategy, it's all of us. So we're all in it together. We've all bought into it because it's our strategy. The second thing, which is just so important to me, is having autonomy in running a business. I want every single person, every single day at this, actively making their own decisions. Now, this relies critically on amazing communication between you and your manager. And there are some really simple hacks that you can put into place here. So don't go to your manager and say, I have done X, Y, Z, because it doesn't give them an opportunity to be involved in that conversation. We'd like to put in the language of intent. So go to your manager and say, we or I intend to do this. Then you have a conversation. Your manager says, that's a great idea. Like, crack on. Or you should go and speak to, Felicity or whoever, because I think they're doing it. Or they may say, do you know what? We tried that a year ago and it didn't work. So what's going to be different this time? And then critically, what happens is trust builds up between you and your manager. And then next time they say, you don't need to come and talk to me about that. Actually, I totally trust you. You've got this. But if we've had this strategy and we all know where we want to get to, you can start to implement autonomy in the business. And there are two consequences, I think, of autonomy. One is, from a personal point of view, I don't think you can get fulfillment at work if it's not your work. I don't think you can be happy if it's not your work. We all want to have pride in our work. And if it's not your work, I don't think you can have pride. So from an individual point of view, it's like critical, I think, to someone's happiness at work. If you do it properly, you create this whole like generation of leaders in your business, actually, I as the CEO, I shouldn't be making any decisions at all. So from a business point of view, it's a no-brainer, but from a personal point of view, it's also a no-brainer.
One of the things I think I hear in what you're doing there is you've kind of turned the way a lot of people and organizations think about empowerment on its head. My observation is often they think of it as, I, the manager, am going to empower you. So I'm going to tell you what to do, and then I'm going to let you figure out how to do it for yourself, rather than you're saying, no. Let's start with what you're aiming to do. Let's start with that. But once you've got that, then, okay, now you're empowered. That's the beginning point. And then we can figure out how it all happens from there. I think that's really interesting.
Yeah, because then it gets exciting. Because then people are really properly thinking for themselves and being creative and solving problems before they've even come up. But you're right. It's not really empowerment when you say, hey, we need to solve this problem. Go away and come out with a solution. You want the people who report into you to come and go, hey, I think we've got this problem. I'm going to come put a cross-functional team together to solve it. It's like, great. Yeah, I remember years and years ago at Ella's Kitchen, when I'd been CEO for sort of 5 years, I made this vow to myself and then to the senior team that I'd never make another single decision. And I said this, and this guy in the front row burst out laughing, which I thought was kind of rude. And I said to him, like, what's so funny? And he said, I'm not being funny, but like, if you're the CEO and you're not making any decisions, what are you doing? And I just thought, wow. I mean, this idea that you've got one person who's so much better than everyone else and has so much more intelligent and can come up with all of these answers that no one else can, it's nonsense.
Somewhere in there, hiring the right people must be key. So do you make decisions on who's going to be in charge of marketing, or do you let them figure that out?
Well, I make decisions on who's in my senior team. So the directors of the business. That's my responsibility to ensure that we have the best people possible and that they're all smarter than me. And they're all brilliant in their individual areas. So that is definitely my responsibility. But below them, so Debbie, who's in charge of marketing, if she needs someone on the team, I'll be part of that interview process, but I won't make the decision. And I won't be checking to see whether that person, say, if they're coming in to do social media, is an expert in social media, because I'm not an expert in social media. So I shouldn't be doing that. I'll be having a chat, and actually my part of the process will be as much for the candidate as it is for me in the business. So I'm involved in other parts of, I guess, the interviewees, but only my direct team.
That's an interesting kind of perspective on what the CEO's role is. Fundamentally, it's get a great team. Yeah.
If I'm doing it differently, it shows that I don't trust the people reporting to me. If I have to make those decisions, where is the trust? It takes a long time to build up, but you can destroy it really, really quickly. If you just think of yourself personally, the person you're reporting into doesn't trust you. It just feels awful. And as a result, you'll start to play things safe. And think of our mission, back to our mission and what we want to achieve. We can't afford to play it safe. We need to take risks, and we need to convince people that they need to change what they're eating. Now, that's a really difficult thing that we need to do. And if we start playing it safe, we're not going to achieve that. Obviously, you've got to allow people to make mistakes, and the way you do that is by not vilifying them when they happen.
The business now is around 20 million pounds turnover, but you've not yet, unless things have changed, made a profit. As I understand it, part of the reason you were brought in was to make it profitable. So A, is that true? And B, how are you going about that? How's that working?
I was hopefully brought in for lots and lots of reasons. We want to start making money as a business. It's important to start making money. It's important really because it gives us so many more choices, and we can start to invest in the parts of the business that we want to invest in to really start delivering on our mission. That's why, for me, it's particularly important. And we don't want to be continually seeking investment ever again. So it's part of the reason why I was brought in, and we're on a mission to kind of transform our business. And we've taken a huge amount of complexity. We've solidified our manufacturing, all the suppliers that we deal with, from 18, 19, depending on who you ask in the business, down to 3. And, we've stripped out a lot of business as we move towards making a profit, which we will hope to do next year.
In some organizations, when there's that sort of a change, people often read it as a sign that either things are going wrong or we're giving up on the purpose or whatever. How are you addressing any concerns like that? Have they come up? And if they have, how do you address them?
Yeah, I think it's different to what we do because intrinsically the product that we are providing is a direct replacement for an animal product right now. We have launches next year, which is super, super exciting, which are going to be slightly different. But if you look at our burgers and sausages and bacon, it is a direct replacement for eating an animal. Everything that we do is directly related to our mission. And the more we sell, the more we deliver on our mission. We are a for-profit business. We're not a charity. And we need to balance the two. And we need to get to profitability, like I said before, as quickly as we can, because it just gives us more options. We have transformed our gross margins. We are on the pathway to getting to profitability. We raised money early this year through an ethical investment fund, which is very, very exciting. And like I said, hopefully we don't have to raise again. And we're making tremendous progress towards getting there.
You talked about some exciting new products coming. Is there anything you can say about that?
We have been working for a couple of years on what would be our 2025, when it launches, take on tofu. So high in protein, 1 of your 5 a day, minimally processed. Tofu has exploded in the last few years in terms of sales. That is also taking people away, I would say, I haven't got the data, but it must be taking people away from animals because it's serving that protein purpose. I think it is definitely still delivering on our mission, but it's not a meat replacement.
Yeah, it's a subtle shift, but it seems to me, if you're going to get to where you want to get to, a really important one. Interesting. You said you got about 50 employees. What's your sense of how much the purpose plays into attracting the right talent? Separate from we're an exciting startup, we're in your field, we're in London, whatever it happens to be, the purpose itself, how much does that play into all that?
I think now that we've tweaked the purpose, I'd have to check, but I believe that to every single person in the business is now connected to our purpose, either from an environmental or I said from an animal point of view. We have a large number of vegans in the business, but you don't have to be vegan or vegetarian to work in our business. I would want everybody to really believe that what we're doing is good and to be connected to our purpose. And the fact that we're a B Corp as well. So we have this kind of intrinsic, we want to be a positive impact business, and we want people who work for us to care about that.
So just kind of focusing in on the strategy, you said you came in, you spent a bit of time having sort of a 3-year look out in the future, and then asked sort of people throughout the business to think through how they were going to contribute to it. If you could sum it up, and sometimes strategies are a little hard to sum up in a few words, but what would you say the strategy is?
The strategy is we want to convert more people to eating our plant-based food than shop in the category. So we genuinely want to change what people are eating. That is our purpose. We want to become a powerhouse of a brand in the UK, and we want people to feel a deep connection with how we do it and why we do it.
And that sounds like it lines up almost one for one with the purpose.
It does, yeah. And there are a couple of other things. We are a B Corp, but we want to be famous for sustainability, and I think that's a change for the business. And we want people to love working at this. And that is something that I'm particularly passionate about.
How do you know you're winning on that? We're not just looking for people who are already eating plant-based. We're trying to get people who aren't in. How do you know you're doing that?
It's really easy, actually. You can check with a company called Kantar, which shows where your customers are coming from. every year we are getting shoppers into the category and buying this who previously had never shopped the category before. You just look in the last, 6 months, we launched something called chicken thighs. You would have no idea that they weren't real chicken. And it kind of exploded across social media with people talking positively. So if I can give you a product and you couldn't tell whether it was pig or whether it was plant-based, and the quality is just as good, it's much, much better for you from a health point of view. It's much better, obviously, because no animal's been killed, and it's much better for the environment. It becomes a no-brainer. And all of those barriers to why you're not purchasing the category have fallen away. That's what we're very, very good at. And that's what we need to continue to be good at.
And so would you feel it was a win if 10 years from now, huge numbers of people had been converted to eating plant-based food? You'd created this enormous worldwide revolution, and yet somehow other people were reaping most of the economic benefit.
100%.
You're all for that.
Yeah. I mean, because it's just a number, isn't it, at the end of the day? I'm not in it for the money.
Mm-hmm.
I'm 51 years old. It's not what drives me. It's not what's important to me. It's not what gives me fulfillment. Our fellow competitors, they're not really the competition. The competition is the meat and dairy industry, really. We should be working together where it's possible. So I absolutely believe in radical collaboration. And if some of our, I'm using inverted commas here, but if some of our competitors do really, really well, fantastic. Good for them.
Interesting. Are you finding that, for the most part, once you raise that, where can we collaborate? Where can we work together? Because it's sort of a campaign as much as a business. Do they say, yeah, that's great? Or are some of them like, no, you're the enemy?
I'd say it's mixed. Fortunately, a few of them around the world are B Corps, and that always makes life a little bit easier when you have that connection. Mm-hmm. Fundamentally, you believe the same thing. The B Corp movement has one aim. That's it. One aim globally, which is change how we measure success in business. And companies that go through the process, it's really, really hard. So you kind of have that, hopefully, that mutual respect for each other as a starting point, which makes it much, much easier. So we've been talking to, B Corps around the world, and it's always great to talk to them. Some of the larger companies, I think they struggle with this idea, because for them, the larger companies, it's just all about the share price.
I guess also you're 100% plant-based, whereas I can imagine some other businesses that have a plant-based focus are part of some bigger thing that it's a mix of stuff.
Absolutely. I mean, some of them are owned by meat companies, which is always I find a bit strange, but there you go.
Yeah. If you don't mind, you mentioned B Corp a number of times. Why is that important to you? Where do you see it going? Is it becoming something that people sort of just sign up for because it's good for marketing purposes? Or is it really still so difficult that you'd only do it if you're really committed to it?
Gosh, I mean, I could talk about this forever. I'll try and keep it brief. I don't want to sidetrack our chat. I passionately believe that when we look at the social and environmental problems that we have in this country or around the world, there is sometimes this expectation that politicians are there to solve these problems. And when we say politicians, who do we mean? So in the UK, do we mean our Prime Minister, Keir Starmer? Do we mean his cabinet or the Labour Party or all MPs or the House? Who are these magical people
right,
who can solve all of these problems? They don't exist, but they do exist inside our companies. And if we can use our companies as a force for good and turn it towards either society or the environment's benefit, the benefit for the company is obvious in terms of engagement of the staff, etc., etc. And the benefit for the environment or society is obvious. And we have such creative geniuses inside our companies that can do these things. And we don't need government to tell us what to do. We don't need government to tell us what's the right thing and what's the wrong thing to do. And you saw this in the US, when they pulled out of the Paris Agreement, and all the businesses in California said, well, we're just going to go and do it anyway.
Because it's the right thing to do.
We don't need somebody to tell us what's right and what's wrong, or what's good for us and what's not good for us.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm so passionate, because business is massive. And if all businesses around the world were behaving like B Corps or became B Corps, the world would look a very different place. And that's why I'm so passionate. It's not because B Corp's perfect. And by the way, it's changing in 2026 to become much, much harder. It's not that it's a perfect assessment, or some companies maybe are gaming the system and some of them are doing it for marketing reasons. But it's really, really hard to certify. At the moment, I don't want to get technical, but there's Section 172 of the Companies Act defines the purpose of every single business in the UK. And I'll paraphrase it, but it is maximize money for shareholders. That is your purpose. And you say that and people go, yeah, but businesses don't do that. Yes, they do. And particularly public companies, they actually have to. Because if you become a CEO and you prioritize the environment, say, over making money, you get fired. You'll get an activist investor come in and you'll get thrown out. So we do need to change this system in which we operate. And B Corps around the world are proving that actually there is another way, more successful way of running a company. And I passionately believe that it's a really, really important movement and community.
Mark, thank you for that. First of all, clearly your passion is coming through, and I think that's great. Changing the subject just a little bit, bringing back to you and not so much some of the bigger things. If I've got it right, you're coming up on your 1-year anniversary. In that journey over the year, what surprised you? What have you learned? How might you think you've changed or grown?
I think I made quite a few mistakes. I did an interview with the Times in which I was quite sort of critical, I guess, of the business and the decisions that we'd made. And it was really poor from me, and it was wrong. I don't know if it's a human sort of condition, but it's almost like everybody says the same thing. Oh, oh my God, it's chaos, or like X, Y, Z. And well, maybe don't go to that with your boss, because your boss has been there for quite some time. So like, think of it strategically, they know that. So how are you going to reframe it? I couldn't see that myself. So I think it took me longer to feel comfortable. I definitely suffer from self-belief sometimes. And I think I should have just taken a bit more time to find my feet. Yeah, fundamentally, if I could do it all again, I would have landed slightly differently.
Any advice you'd give to other leaders when they're thinking about purpose and strategy?
Involve the whole team.
Yeah, great message.
Our operations director, his functional strategy that they recently built, he said he just gave it to his team, helped them out a little bit, but they built the strategy. And he came to me excited and said, it's so much better than anything that I ever would have come up with. And I was like, that's amazing. So believe in your team. I think you'll be surprised with what they come back with. Will be much better than what you could have done yourself. And if you're not a B Corp, go to the B Corp website and check it out, because in the businesses that I've been in, it's been absolutely transformational. Not for selling more product, not for marketing the product, but internally, in terms of the culture, it gave me this kind of inner drive around doing more and trying to be better. So I could not recommend it more.
I think it's a great note to end on. Mark, thank you so much for joining us. I'm really looking forward to seeing where you go and how you take forward the really great mission that you're on, fulfilling your purpose there. That's fantastic. Thanks for joining us, Mark.
Well, thank you very much for having me, Belden.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of The Purposeful Strategist. In addition to being available on our website, you can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Google Podcasts. If you enjoyed this episode, please do follow us and leave us a 5-star review. It helps others find the podcast. Thanks again, and join us soon for the next episode of The Purposeful Strategist.